You won't believe how this story began because for a long time, Pastor Creflo Dollar looked like the kind of man people trusted without a second thought. People said he was chosen by God, a leader whose words could change lives. His style was smooth, his confidence was strong, and his sermons were full of hope. Crowds loved him. They followed him like he carried all the answers to their prayers. His name became a symbol of faith, success, and blessings. But here is the shocking part. Behind all the bright lights, cheers, cameras, and perfect smiles, there was another story no one knew. A story that lived quietly in the heart of his own home. Tina Dollar had been with him from the very beginning. She was there when they had nothing. Just a small rented hall, old wooden chairs, and a dream. She watched him rise from a small town pastor to a national star. She stood by him through struggles, long nights, prayer meetings, and endless work. Destiny took an unexpected turn, but she didn't know it yet. She still believed in the mission. She still believed in the man she had married. But slowly, something inside him began to change, and she could feel it more than anyone else. His sermons started to sound different, as if they were practiced performances instead of messages from the heart. His eyes, which once showed warmth and honesty, now seemed distant, tired, and heavy with something he refused to say. His words about faith sounded strong in public, but at home he grew quiet, distracted, and restless. This is where it gets interesting because Tina had no idea that her life was about to change in a way she never imagined. And what she was about to discover would not only shake her marriage, but also the image millions of people had of the man they called pastor. When Tina's voice finally reached the public, it was not angry. It was not revengeful. It was honest. She had lived for years behind the shadow of a man the world praised as perfect. He preached about light, but slowly he had started to lose sight of it. Let me tell you, Tina kept quiet for a long time because she did not want to destroy what they had built together. She did not want to shame him or her family. She believed silence was strength. But the truth was, her silence had become a weight that crushed her spirit every single day. She understood something important. Sometimes silence is more painful than the truth. Sometimes holding everything inside destroys a person from the inside. She kept smiling in front of people, even when her heart was breaking. She prayed for clarity, but the more she prayed, the heavier her chest felt. She kept telling herself that everything would change, that God would fix everything, that the man she once loved would return. But each day, the distance between them grew wider. But here is the shocking part. Tina didn't speak because she wanted to hurt him. She spoke because she needed to save herself. She spoke because love without honesty becomes a cage. What makes this story different? It wasn't built on hate. It wasn't built on anger. It was built on truth. Truth that had been locked inside her for too long. And when she finally opened her heart, she didn't know that her words would start a storm no one was ready for. As the world continued to praise Pastor Creflo, only Tina knew that their home had already started to crack. She saw the late night phone calls, the sudden distance, the tired face he tried to hide. She felt the growing silence between them, a silence that scared her more than any fight. She whispered prayers at night, asking for guidance, begging for answers, hoping she was imagining everything. But deep down, she knew something was wrong, something big, something life-changing. This was only the beginning of a truth that would shake everything built over years of faith, fame, and image. And the craziest part was, no one else saw it coming. Tina's heart grew heavier with each passing day. She started noticing small things that did not make sense. Sudden trips he never explained, late night messages that he quickly deleted, and financial decisions that seemed secretive. At first, she tried to believe him when he said it was all for the ministry, but slowly, doubt began to creep in. the man she had prayed with every morning, the man who once shared his dreams openly with her, was now guarded, tense, and sometimes even angry when she asked simple questions. The craziest part was how carefully he hid his life from her, even while preaching honesty and faith to thousands. One evening, Tina was organizing ministry papers in their home office. She opened a folder she had never looked through before and froze. Among the printed emails and documents, there was one conversation that made her stomach drop. The emails were from Pastor Creflo to someone she had never heard of. The words were emotional, intimate, and far too personal for a married man of God. She read them over and over, not wanting to believe what she saw, but each line confirmed the betrayal she had feared. Her hands shook, her chest ached. She felt like the ground beneath her had disappeared. Destiny had truly taken an unexpected turn, and there was no way to turn back. She confronted him that night, her voice trembling, trying to understand what she had seen. At first, he denied everything. Then he became defensive, angry, and even accused her of spying. That night, Tina sat alone, staring at the cross on the wall, trying to make sense of it all. The man who once preached about grace and forgiveness, the man she had trusted more than anyone, was now someone she barely recognized. Her silence had protected him for years, shielding him from judgment, shielding their family from shame, and shielding herself from the truth. But she now understood that silence had also been her cage. After days of sleepless nights and silent suffering, Tina realized that she could no longer carry this weight alone. She reached out to a trusted friend, someone who could help her share her side of the story honestly, without revenge, without bitterness. Let me tell you, it was not easy. Her voice faltered as she spoke, but for the first time in years, she felt the freedom that comes from truth. People were shocked. Some did not believe her, thinking she was seeking attention or acting out of resentment. Others slowly started to see the cracks that Tina had lived with in silence, realizing that even those who appear perfect can hide deep flaws. As her story spread, the world reacted immediately. Social media exploded with opinions. Some condemned Pastor Creflo for hypocrisy and deceit. Others defended him, claiming no one was perfect. Donations slowed, church attendance began to decline, and the ministry that once shone brightly started to feel the first shadows of doubt. Tina, however, chose peace over conflict. She left the limelight, moved to a smaller home, and started a small foundation to help women who had suffered in silence, transforming her pain into purpose. This is where it gets interesting, because while she found healing, Pastor Creflo was left alone to face the consequences of his actions and to reflect on the life he had built under the bright lights. Her courage to speak the truth did not just affect her life, it shook the foundation of everyone who had believed in him. And the most remarkable thing, she did not speak to destroy. She spoke to free herself. What makes this story different? It is the story of a woman reclaiming her voice and finding strength in honesty, while a man once revered for faith and guidance faced the harsh reality of his choices. After Tina's story went public, Pastor Creflo could no longer hide behind his image. The applause, the cameras, and the millions of eyes that once looked up to him meant nothing when he faced the silence of his own home and the truth of his mistakes. He tried to return to the pulpit, but this time it was different. His sermons were no longer about wealth, success, or perfection. They were quiet, humble, and full of honesty. He spoke about pride, forgiveness, and the pain of failing. People who had followed him for years looked at him differently. Some stayed, moved by the raw truth and the human behind the mask. Others turned away, unable or unwilling to forgive. But here is the shocking part. Even as he fell from grace, a new understanding of faith began to emerge within him. Tina, on the other hand, found her own strength in a way she had never imagined. Her small foundation slowly grew, helping women who had been silenced for years. Every time she shared her story, she reminded people that truth heals even when it hurts. She spoke calmly, with knowledge, not resentment. She taught that peace, not fame or attention, was the real source of strength. Her life became a quiet example of how courage and honesty could turn suffering into purpose. People no longer saw her and Lee as the wife of a famous preacher. They saw her as a woman who had survived betrayal and chosen to rise above it. The contrast between their paths was striking. Pastor Creflo lost many things: his fortune, his fan base, and the pride that had once defined him. But sometimes loss is exactly what a person needs to understand what truly matters. He began preaching about second chances and the simple beauty of truth, not grand promises of wealth. His tone softened, and slowly he started to rebuild his life with humility and sincerity. This is how a man who once seemed untouchable learned the value of honesty and the weight of his own actions. Meanwhile, Tina continued to grow in strength and influence, quietly building a life of purpose and meaning. She had discovered that courage was not loud or dramatic. It was calm, consistent, and grounded in truth. Each day, she reminded herself and others that silence only protects lies, while speaking out can set the spirit free. And even though her journey had been painful, it gave her a new vision of life, one where honesty was the foundation of love and faith could exist even without perfection. The world may have watched the headlines fade, but the lessons she carried remained powerful, a quiet but unshakable legacy. Through all of this, both their lives moved in new directions. The craziest part was that the fall of one had become the rise of the other. Tina's voice inspired many who had suffered in silence, and Pastor Creflo, humbled by his mistakes, began to understand what true faith really meant. Their story was no longer about scandal. It was about truth, healing, and the human capacity to change. People started to see that love without honesty is empty, and fame without integrity is meaningless. And in this truth, both of them found lessons that would shape the rest of their lives. Years passed, and both Tina and Pastor Creflo continued on paths shaped by truth and consequence. Tina moved forward quietly, her spirit finally free from the weight she had carried for so long. Her foundation slowly expanded, helping more women find their voices and rebuild their lives. Every time she shared her experience, it was with calm clarity, showing others that courage does not always roar. It sometimes whispers, guiding people to see that silence often protects lies, while honesty sets the spirit free. She had turned her pain into purpose, and in doing so, she discovered a strength far greater than any fame or fortune could provide. Let me tell you, people began to admire her not for being the wife of a well-known pastor, but for being a woman who had reclaimed her life and her truth. Pastor Creflo, meanwhile, faced the consequences of his actions. His ministry had lost some followers, and donations slowed. He traveled alone to preach about humility, forgiveness, and the lessons of failure. Gone were the grand promises of wealth and blessings. Instead, he focused on honesty, second chances, and rebuilding faith. This is where it gets interesting. Some of his old followers returned, not because they expected perfection, but because they saw a man learning from his mistakes. Others stayed away, unwilling to forgive. Through it all, he began to understand that true faith is not about appearances, applause, or riches. It is about living honestly, even when it costs you everything. The story of Tina and Pastor Creflo was no longer just a tale of a failed marriage or hidden betrayals. The craziest part was how it had become a lesson for everyone who watched. Tina's bravery to speak out reminded people that truth heals and silence only hides pain. Pastor Creflo's fall and gradual recovery showed that humility and honesty can come even after the highest rises and the deepest mistakes. Life had taken both of them on separate journeys, yet each path taught the same lesson. Love without honesty is a shadow, and faith without truth is hollow. In the end, Tina found peace in her quiet life, free from the noise of headlines and judgment. Pastor Creflo continued to preach, but with a heart that had been humbled and a voice that now carried sincerity rather than show. Both had learned that real strength comes from facing the truth, even when it hurts, and that destiny often takes unexpected turns that reshape lives forever. Their story became a reminder that courage can shine light in the darkest places, that honesty can rebuild what silence once destroyed, and that even broken lives can find a new beginning. What makes this story different? It is the story of human resilience, the power of truth, and the way faith, when paired with honesty, can transform lives in ways no one could have predicted. This was the end of their journey as the world knew it, but the lessons they lived on would remain, quietly shaping the hearts of those who chose to listen.